First contact turns to horror. The vastness of space was silent, but inside the command deck of the Imperial battleship Tyrant's Fist, there was nothing but noise. Admiral Vartok stood tall, his red eyes glowing under the dim lights of the control room. The Galactic Empire had conquered over 100 worlds, and now it was Earth's turn. "Humans are primitive," Captain Selkor said, his voice filled with confidence. "Their weapons are outdated. Their defenses are weak. This will be over in an hour." The Admiral smirked. "Then let's begin." The fleet moved forward, massive warships casting dark shadows over Earth. Thousands of Imperial soldiers prepared for deployment. Fighters launched, cutting through space like blades. Earth's defenses were laughable. Only a few satellites and a handful of space stations. The Empire had seen stronger resistance from mining colonies. "This will be easy," one of the officers whispered. Then the alarm screamed. Something was wrong. A single human ship appeared on the radar. It was small, too small to be a threat. But it was moving strangely. It blinked in and out of their sensors, like a ghost. "Scan it," Admiral Vartok ordered. The results came back. No weapons, no shields, no life signs. The crew laughed. "Is this a joke? They send an empty ship to challenge the Empire." Admiral Vartok narrowed his eyes. Something about this felt wrong. The small human ship drifted closer. And then it vanished. Not an explosion, not a warp jump. It simply disappeared, as if it had never existed. The bridge fell silent. "What happened?" Selkor asked, his voice uneasy. I don't know, sir," a technician stammered. It's gone." A deep, unsettling feeling crawled up the Admiral's spine. He had seen many battles. He had crushed rebellions, but he had never seen something like this. Then another alarm blared. One of their own ships, the Imperial cruiser Bloodfang, was gone. No distress signal, no attack, no wreckage, just gone. The crew panicked. Officers yelled over each other. Screens flickered. Their systems began to fail. "Pull back," the Admiral barked. Now, the fleet started to move, but something was holding them back. It was as if the space around them had become heavier. The engines roared, but the ships barely moved. And then the lights dimmed. A transmission came through. It was audio only. A deep, cold voice filled the command deck. "You should not have come here." The words sent chills through every officer on the bridge. It was a human voice. Calm, empty, like a whisper before death. "Identify yourself," the Admiral shouted. Silence. Then, one by one, the Imperial ships started disappearing. Not exploding, not breaking apart, just vanishing. The crew screamed. The fleet was vanishing like shadows under sunlight. "Fire, fire everything," the Admiral ordered. Lasers and missiles shot into the darkness, but there was nothing to hit. The stars themselves seemed to flicker and shift. Then, the voice returned. "You did not come to fight. You came to conquer. But we do not fight. We erase." The last thing Admiral Vartok saw was the darkness swallowing his ship whole. And then, silence. Humanity's deadly secret. Darkness swallowed the Tyrant's Fist, the mighty flagship of the Galactic Empire, once a symbol of power, now drifted in a silent void. No alarms, no lights, no movement. The crew held their breath, their bodies stiff with fear. Admiral Vartok gripped the edge of his command chair, his claws digging into the cold metal. "Report," he barked. No one answered. "Report," he roared again, his voice echoing through the silent bridge. One by one, screens flickered back to life, but what they showed made no sense. The rest of the Imperial fleet was gone. No wreckage, no escape pods, just empty space. Captain Selker's hands trembled over his console. This is impossible," he whispered. Admiral Vartok clenched his jaw. No, this is something else. He turned to his communications officer. Send a distress signal to High Command. Now. The officer's fingers danced over the console. Then his face went pale. Sir, I can't. The Admiral narrowed his eyes. What do you mean you can't? The officer gulped. The system. It's working, but the signal isn't leaving the ship. It's like space itself is swallowing our transmissions. Silence filled the bridge. A heavy, suffocating silence. Then, a whisper. A deep, distorted voice crackled through the ship's comms. You do not understand what you have awakened. Every officer froze. It was the same voice from before. Cold, emotionless, inhuman. Selker's throat went dry. Who? What are you? The lights flickered again. The view screen changed, showing something no one on the bridge could comprehend. A battlefield, but not just any battlefield. A graveyard of war. The wreckage of thousands of ships, drifting in a lifeless void. Some imperial, some alien, some unrecognizable. Pieces of vessels older than the Empire itself, shattered and abandoned. And in the distance, something moved. Not ships, not asteroids. Something alive. Massive, shifting shapes lurked in the darkness. They twisted unnaturally, their forms breaking the logic of sight. They were neither solid nor gas, neither light nor shadow. And they were watching. Selker stumbled back from the view screen, his voice cracked with panic. Those things. What are they? Admiral Vartok clenched his fists. His warrior instinct screamed at him. This was not a fight they could win. This was not a fight at all. The voice returned, whispering in their ears, coming from everywhere and nowhere. Your empire believes it has conquered the stars, but there are places in this galaxy you were never meant to go. And now, you have entered our domain. The Admiral's breathing was heavy. His pulse pounded in his skull. You think you can intimidate me? The Galactic Empire does not fear shadows. For the first time, the voice laughed. A hollow, chilling sound. And then, the ship shook. Something was outside. Something was wrapping around the tyrant's fist. The hull groaned as if it was being crushed by an invisible force. The crew screamed as systems failed one by one. Lights flickered red. Oxygen levels dropped. And then the voice whispered one last time. You were never meant to leave. The view screen flashed white, and the tyrant's fist was gone, vanished, like it had never existed. The Empire's worst nightmare. Darkness. Silence. Then, screaming. Admiral Vartok jolted awake, gasping for air. His body felt weightless. His vision swam in the dim red emergency lights. Where was he? The bridge of the tyrant's fist was gone. The crew, gone. He floated in an abyss, surrounded by shattered metal and drifting corpses. The remains of his fleet hung in space, twisted and lifeless. The proud warships of the Galactic Empire, reduced to nothing more than silent debris. Then he heard it. A heartbeat. Badum. Badum. Slow, deep, but it wasn't coming from him. It was coming from outside. His blood ran cold. He turned, and for the first time, he saw it. Not a fleet, not a planet. A structure. It stretched beyond sight, massive and ancient. A colossal labyrinth of impossible design. Ships, some older than the Empire itself, were embedded in its surface, like insects trapped in amber. It was not a station. It was not a shipyard. It was a graveyard. And it was alive. Something washed him. A voice echoed in his mind, not through speakers, not through sound, but directly into his thoughts. You were warned. Pain exploded in his skull. Visions flooded his mind. The past. Thousands of years ago, another empire had tried to conquer this place. They had vanished. Their entire civilization erased from history. The present. The Galactic Empire had stumbled into something beyond its understanding. They had been judged. They had been claimed. The future. There was no future. Admiral Vartok screamed. The weight of the knowledge crushed his mind. He felt himself slipping, his body disintegrating, his thoughts unraveling, as if he had never existed. But then, a flash of blue light. A new voice, sharp, cold, human. Found him. Bring him in. Before Vartok could react, something grabbed him. An invisible force pulling him through the void. The graveyard vanished in a blur of motion. The suffocating presence disappeared. And then, he was on a ship. Bright lights, oxygen, the hum of working machinery. He gasped, clutching his chest. He was alive. Boots echoed on the metal floor. A shadow loomed over him. A human in a sleek black uniform stood before him. His face was calm, but his eyes were cold. Too cold. The human knelt down, staring at the defeated admiral. "Welcome back," he said. His voice was smooth, controlled, dangerous. Vartok's mind raced. The Empire had believed humans were weak, primitive. But now, he wasn't so sure. The human stood up. "You wandered into the dark and thought yourself a conqueror." He tilted his head. "You were lucky. Most don't get a second chance." Vartok swallowed. His throat was dry. "Dilly, what are you?" The human smirked. "The only reason your empire still exists." The admiral's blood turned to ice. This was not a rescue. This was something far worse. The humans had been waiting for them. Humanity's true power. Admiral Vartok had faced countless battles. He had crushed rebellions, burned entire planets, and watched enemies kneel before the might of the Galactic Empire. But nothing had ever made him feel this helpless. The room was eerily quiet, filled with a low hum from unseen machinery. The walls were smooth, metallic, but lacked the cold, rigid design of Imperial warships. Instead, they seemed alive, pulsing with energy. The air was thick with something he couldn't identify. Not fear, not aggression. Control. The human stood before him, arms folded behind his back, his uniform pristine, his expression unreadable. Vartok's throat was dry, but he forced himself to speak. What is this place?" The human's lips curled into a slight smirk. "This," he gestured around them, "this is where we keep guests." Vartok clenched his fists. "You mean prisoners?" The human tilted his head. "Depends. Do you feel like a prisoner?" The admiral's sharp eyes darted around the room. No visible weapons, no guards, no restraints. Yet he knew escape was impossible. He steadied his voice. "What do you want?" The human stepped closer, his cold blue eyes staring into Vartok's soul. "That's the wrong question." Vartok bristled. "Then what's the right one?" The smirk vanished. The air grew heavier. "The right question," the human said, "is how much of your empire do you want to save?" Silence. Vartok's twin hearts pounded. "Explain." The human exhaled, as if speaking to a child. "You think your fleet was the first to enter forbidden space, that your empire is the greatest to ever rise." He shook his head. "You are insignificant." Vartok growled, standing. "We have ruled the stars for centuries." "We." The human raised a finger. The room shifted. The walls faded, replaced by a massive holographic display. Vartok's breath caught in his throat. Planets, entire systems, wiped out. He recognized the marks of destruction. Twisted wreckage, hollowed-out worlds, fleets turned to dust. Some had been thriving civilizations just weeks ago. Others were from records so ancient, their existence was nothing more than myths. And then he saw it. His own homeworld. Vartok's knees nearly buckled. The capital planet of the Empire, bathed in eerie red light. His voice wavered. What have you done?" The human's expression didn't change. Nothing. Yet, Vartok's breathing grew shallow. He had underestimated humans before, but now, for the first time, he truly feared them. The human turned, walking toward the doorway. "You made a mistake, Admiral. Your fleet was not defeated. It was removed. We gave you a gift, survival. But the next time your empire crosses the line, a hologram change. The capital planet of the Galactic Empire erased in a single blink. There will be no survivors." The doors slid open. The human stepped through, pausing only to say one last thing. "Decide wisely." And then Vartok was alone, shaking. For the first time in his life, an admiral of the Galactic Empire did not know what to do. The Empire's desperation. Admiral Vartok sat frozen, his mind a storm of chaos. The weight of the human's final words pressed on him like a collapsing star. Decide wisely. How could he? His entire understanding of warfare, of power, had just been shattered. The Empire had ruled the stars for centuries, yet here he was, powerless before creatures they had dismissed as primitive. His breathing slowed. His military training kicked in. Focus. Think. Adapt. He forced himself to stand, his posture straightening despite the trembling in his limbs. He needed answers. Now. The door slid open without a sound. No guards. No weapons pointed at him. Strange. The humans were either foolishly overconfident or so advanced they didn't consider him a threat. Both possibilities were terrifying. He stepped into the corridor. It was silent. Clean. Unlike any warship he had ever seen. No visible weapons, yet he felt watched. A soft chime rang out, and suddenly, the walls became transparent. Vartok's breath caught in his throat. Through the invisible walls, he saw the vastness of space, but it wasn't the stars that made his blood run cold. It was the fleet. Not a few warships. Not even a battle group. An armada. Sleek, angular vessels, unlike anything the Empire had encountered, hovered in the abyss. Their hulls shimmered as if reality itself bent around them. And they were completely silent. No comms chatter, no active weapons, no unnecessary movement. They waited. Vartok had seen countless battle fleets, but this was different. The silence, the precision, it was like standing before a sleeping predator, knowing that with a single wrong move, it would awaken and end you. He swallowed hard. Then he saw it. At the center of the formation, a massive structure loomed in the void. It was no mere warship. It was a fortress. A command station. A superweapon. He couldn't tell. But what he did know was this. If the humans unleashed their full power, the Empire wouldn't stand a chance. A voice snapped him out of his thoughts. "You're awake." Vartok turned sharply. The same human from before stood before him, hands clasped behind his back. No armor. No weapons. Just confidence. Too much confidence. Vartok clenched his jaw. "I want to speak with your leaders." The human raised an eyebrow. "You are." The admiral's stomach dropped. This man, this one human, was in control. The human smirked. "You don't understand yet, do you?" Vartok growled. "Then explain." The human took a step closer. "The Empire believes in power, in overwhelming force. It believes it is invincible." He gestured to the fleet outside. "That belief is a lie." Vartok's twin hearts pounded. The human leaned in slightly, his voice calm, but filled with quiet menace. "You invaded our space. You threatened our people. And yet, we did not retaliate. We did not attack your home world. We did not crush your fleets." Vartok's fists tightened. "Why?" The human smiled. "Because we don't need to." Silence. Vartok struggled to breathe. They weren't holding back out of mercy. They were holding back because the Empire was so beneath them. Retaliation wasn't even necessary. His mind raced. If he returned to the Emperor with this information, he would be executed for treason. No one would believe him. The Empire had never encountered a force they could not subjugate, and yet here he stood, alive only because these humans allowed it. The human watched him carefully, as if reading his thoughts. "You have a choice, Admiral." Vartok swallowed hard. "And if I choose war?" The human's smirk faded. "Then we won't fight you." Vartok's breath caught. "You won't." The human's gaze darkened. "We will erase you." The words hit like a shockwave. Not a threat, not a boast, a statement of fact. Vartok closed his eyes for a long moment. When he opened them, he finally understood. This wasn't a negotiation. This wasn't a warning. This was a mercy. For now, the Empire's last mistake. Admiral Vartok returned to his fleet in stunned silence. The moment he stepped onto his flagship, his officers surrounded him, demanding answers. What happened? Are we at war? What do we do, Admiral? Vartok didn't answer immediately. He stared at the holomap displaying the Empire's controlled territories. They had thought themselves rulers of the galaxy, invincible, supreme, unstoppable. But now he knew the truth. They were nothing compared to the humans. His mind reeled. He had two choices: return to the Emperor and admit defeat, or convince the Empire to stand down without revealing the true scale of the threat. The first would mean execution. The second, impossible. The Empire did not surrender. A warning beep interrupted his thoughts. His second-in-command, Captain Zorvek, stiffened. "Admiral," he said, voice sharp with alarm. "A transmission from High Command. The Emperor himself." Vartok's blood ran cold. He took a steadying breath. On screen, the hologram flickered to life, revealing the Emperor's towering figure. His golden robes shimmered with authority, his eyes burning with the intensity of 1,000 battles. "Admiral Vartok," the Emperor said, his voice like thunder, "I assume you have crushed these vermin." Vartok hesitated. His twin hearts pounded in his chest. Lie. Stall. Do something. But before he could speak, another voice interrupted. "Your Majesty, I apologize, but we must act now." Vartok turned sharply. General Karel, one of the most ruthless commanders in the Empire. Karel's scaled face twisted into a grin. "The humans sent you back alive as an insult. I say we wipe them from the stars." Vartok's throat tightened. "No, you fool. You don't understand." The Emperor leaned forward. "I agree. We cannot allow this defiance. Prepare the full armada." Vartok's breath hitched. "No, no, no. Your Majesty," he blurted out. "We must reconsider. They are more dangerous than we thought." Karel scoffed. "Let them be dangerous. The Empire has conquered thousands of worlds. We will crush this one." Vartok clenched his fists. They didn't get it. They didn't see what he saw. "Admiral," the Emperor commanded, his golden eyes piercing. "Are you saying you doubt our victory?" Vartok hesitated. His life depended on the next words he spoke. "Your Majesty, the humans do not fight wars." Silence fell over the command deck. The Emperor narrowed his eyes. "Then what do they do?" Vartok swallowed. "They end them." A cold chill settled over the room. Karel snorted. "Enough of this nonsense. The Armada moves out immediately." Vartok's heart pounded as he watched the Empire seal its fate. The humans had warned them. And now, the storm was coming. The day the Empire fell, the Imperial Armada moved like a tidal wave through space, thousands of warships forming an unstoppable force. They had conquered empires, burned planets, and crushed rebellions. This would be no different. Admiral Vartok stood silently on the bridge of his flagship, staring at the holo display. The fleet was approaching Sol, humanity's home system. He had tried to warn them. He had pleaded for reason. But the Empire did not listen to fear. They only understood war. And now, they would learn the cost. The first shot. The moment the fleet exited hyperspace near the human homeworld, something felt wrong. There was no defense fleet, no planetary shields, no orbital cannons, nothing. Carol sneered. Cowards, they have already surrendered. The Emperor's voice crackled over the comms. Burn their world. 1,000 Imperial warships charged their plasma cannons. The atmosphere buzzed with energy. Victory was near. Then the stars went dark. The trap closes. The Empire's fleet was not alone. Massive objects, invisible before, shimmered into existence. Human stealth ships. But these were not ordinary warships. They were juggernauts, moon-sized behemoths, silent and motionless, waiting like predators in the abyss. And they were everywhere, surrounding the Imperial fleet. The realization hit Carl like a fist. How? They were waiting for us. Vartok closed his eyes. It was already over. The humans had not been caught off guard. They had been patient. Extinction begins. The Imperial fleet panicked. Some ships fired wildly into the darkness. Others tried to turn, to flee, but there was nowhere to run. Then, without warning, the human fleet opened fire. There was no declaration, no mercy, no hesitation, just annihilation. Beams of energy sliced through Imperial dreadnoughts like paper. Ships shattered, crumbling under invisible forces that defied all known physics. Some simply ceased to exist, erased from reality itself. Admiral Vartok watched in horror. This isn't war. It was extermination. Carol's ship exploded before he could even scream. One by one, the Imperial warships fell, destroyed before they could even fight back. The Emperor, still on the comms, heard it all. His mighty armada, his invincible fleet, destroyed in minutes. The final message. Only one ship remained, Vartok's flagship. His screens flickered. A human transmission. A single message. We warned you. Then, a pulse of energy engulfed his ship. Vartok felt nothing. And the Galactic Empire ceased to exist.